The Jurassic Park sequels were doomed to never be as good as the first, and by that I'm not saying they should have been made differently, although yes, some bits probably should have.
Alan.
I'm saying that while Jurassic Park is a wonderful story, it's creative and fun and captured the imagination of a whole generation, it is also a story concept that lends itself rather poorly to having follow-up stories. When you're making a sequel, you've always got to ask, why did people love the first one? And with Jurassic Park, the entire first half of film 1 is dedicated to this feeling of wonder, seeing the Brachiosaurus alongside the characters in a way that back in the day was absolutely breathtaking. Having the raptor come out of their eggs, having the wacky idea of DNA encased in amber explained to us, even having the characters help with the health problems of a triceratops, which is a thing so weird it can't help but capture our attention from sheer novelty value alone. So much of this film is so awe-inspiring, you can't help but smile through most of it. For all intents and purposes, we, the audience, react to Jurassic Park in much the same way Hammond wanted his park-goers to react when they first arrived. But at the film's midpoint, it turns into a horror story as everything goes wrong, and to its credit, the film handles this genre swap in the middle impeccably. When that hunter gets flanked by the velociraptor and he says,
"Clever girl."
That will be forever etched in my memory. It terrified me as a kid. Yes, the movie had great music and effects and writing and so on, but I'd argue it was those two things, the wonder and the horror, both of which being very well done, are the main things that define Jurassic Park's identity as a story. And it was those two aspects that needed to be recaptured in order to make a great sequel. Only there was a problem, because how do you capture a sense of wonder a second time over? It's a question that's way harder to answer than it might first seem, because we only feel awe at new crazy ideas. And how do you throw in new ideas of that caliber when you've already exhausted your concept's capacity to create awe? Jurassic Park is a real one-and-done kind of story concept that's great for a short, powerful burst of wonder, just enough to last for the first half of a film, let's say, but not much after that. Meanwhile, when you look at other films like Star Wars, that is not the case. A New Hope had part of its core appeal be awe at this creative new setting. A New Hope, at the end of the day, is really just the hero's journey told in another form. It's not exactly a fresh kind of story formula, but what elevated that story to being so much more was a highly creative, awe-inspiring setting. Lucas knew that, so made a great sequel by finding a way to carry over that wonder. Now we get to see Hoth, an alien Arctic world, then a city floating above a gas giant. Both imaginative settings that rekindled that feeling of wonder so integral to the fun of film 1. Jurassic Park, due to the nature of its concept, couldn't do this because, as obvious as it is to say, you can only show us dinosaurs for the first time once. They had to abandon the idea of recapturing that awe and doubled down on the other thing the film did well, that being the horror. So films 2 and 3 are nothing but out-and-out horrors from start to finish. I have no doubt that back in the day, people went to see Jurassic Park 2 and 3 expecting to feel that wonder all over again, but were left sorely disappointed. You can point at the Jurassic World franchise, and again, it's the same. Jurassic World is very aware of this, even making this a plot point because people aren't getting excited enough for dinosaurs, so they're genetically engineering this super deadly T-Rex hybrid, doing something bold and new to create some new wonder for better publicity. It's cool they're self-aware about this, but no matter how much you poke fun at the flaws in your own movie, those flaws are still there. Let's not forget that there's another side to this issue. I've said before on this channel that one of the principles that makes any good sequel good is that they don't just recapture what people liked about the original, they also add in a bunch of new ideas that harmonise with those original elements. For an example of this done right, look at Shrek 2. In film 1, we have the humour, the reimagined fairy tale elements, and the romance between Shrek and Fiona. So what Shrek 2 did, which couldn't have gone down more smoothly, is they took everything loved about film 1 and didn't just carry it over, they took it to the next level. Shrek's and Fiona's romance is fleshed out even further as we explore it in a new way. We're getting new characters like Prince Charming and the Fairy Godmother, massively fleshing out the scope of these fairy tale elements, yet doing it in a way where it's directly challenging Shrek's and Fiona's relationship, because that's the goal of these new characters. Films like Shrek 2, Terminator 2 and Empire Strikes Back are masterclasses in great sequeling because of this approach. Imagine if we got 2 more films after Shrek 1 that did nothing to evolve that formula. They just had Shrek once again escorting Fiona across a fairy tale land. That sounds way more boring than what we got, and that is more or less exactly what the Jurassic Park sequels are, especially 2 and 3. While watching them, there is a strong sense that all those films are really out to do is recapture the exact same feelings we felt in the climax of that first film, and nothing else. Whenever you look at great sequels, they always get more creative than this. It is no wonder people don't like those films, because as Ron Swanson once said,
"It's always worse the second time around."
You can look at the first one. The plot of this one is, a corporation chooses to meddle with nature and create a dinosaur theme park for profit, but they're pushing the boundaries of science further than they should be pushed. A man in touch with nature comes along and says, "No, you shouldn't do this, don't mess with nature." But they're ignored, and of course it ends in disaster and becomes a bit of a horror story as everyone is eaten by dinosaurs. So the funny thing is, I was actually talking about the first Jurassic Park film there. I just asked my editor to play Jurassic World clips over it, and it worked just depressingly well. People didn't mind Jurassic World. In a word, it was fine. It got okay reviews. Certainly better reviews than Jurassic Parks 2 and 3. But I've yet to meet one person who enjoys it more than that first film, and there is something to that. I think Jurassic World and The Force Awakens fall for an identical problem. They're both living in the shadow of a great story that came before, so in the writer's infinite wisdom they decided, hey, why bother to do something fresh when we can tell the exact same story again? You know what happens when you photocopy something and then you photocopy that photocopy, and each time you do it the details just get worse and worse? Yeah, that is my review of the Jurassic World trilogy. From a sequeling perspective, there is a fascinating devolution as the films go along. Like, say what you like about how well they were made, but what is clear is they lost touch with their roots more and more as things went along, until it ends with Jurassic World Dominion. In this one, while they give us obligatory horror scenes, they also have bike chases, which will be more at home in an Indiana Jones film than they would a Jurassic Park one. There's even a whole sequence involving a knife fight and leap across a balcony that feels uncannily similar to a certain scene in Jason Bourne Ultimatum. It is playing on screen right now for you for your judgment. Let me know if these scenes look oddly similar to you. We also have scenes where characters are infiltrating an enemy base like it's some kind of spy thriller, and while they're fine scenes, we didn't love Jurassic Park for the Jason Bourne action thriller emphasis, and we didn't love it for that Indiana Jones feel either. Jurassic World Dominion is a film with no identity. It is trying so hard to capture what we like about other films, it nearly totally forgets to capture what we love about Jurassic Park. But there's something more here, another entirely separate reason why the sequels just never quite measured up. It's all to do with theme. The big theme of film 1 can be boiled down into the question, can science go too far? Like any good story, we have characters taking different stances on this theme. We have Grant, a technophobe who loathes modern science.
I hate computers.
Dr. Grant's not mission compatible.
Got it in for me.
He firmly believes, yes, science can go too far. In fact, all of science has already gone too far. Then you have Hammond, a man so enamored with the idea of progress for progress's sake, he is happy to bring back dinosaurs from extinction, oblivious to the dangers. We then have our exploration. The character's beliefs are challenged. Hammond sees what unchecked progress can do, sees how his attempts to control the dinosaurs by making them all infertile clearly hasn't worked, and he sees the follies in his belief. Yet it's also not one-sided, as Grant has the very technology he hates be the thing that saves his life in the climax, and the film offers its wisdom with both Grant and Hammond having grown to see the folly of their old views. It tells us that while technology is important, some things are best left alone, giving us a nice tie-off to the theme. This is neat, effective storytelling, and it's hard to do better than this. Also, as a power tip, if you ever want to analyse a story, story, the main character's arc almost always underpins the theme of the story. So as a technique to realise the theme of any story, you should start by asking how do the characters change and extrapolate from that what the story is trying to say. So with that said, let's do exactly that for Jurassic Park 2. What is this one's theme? Well, Jeff Goldblum begins the film saying interacting with the dinosaurs on this island is the worst idea in the history of bad ideas. He only agrees to go there because his girlfriend is about to die there. In the middle of the film, he says,
"Taking dinosaurs off this island is the worst idea in the long, sad history of bad ideas."
And at the end of the film, his beliefs are fully vindicated because, yes, it turns out letting a T-Rex loose among humans isn't a good idea after all. Ian is static. It's honestly rather funny how the Ian we see at the end of film 2 is identical to the Ian we see at the start of film 1. He learns no lessons. Now, Ian being static works fine for film 1 because he's a side character, and side characters can easily get away with never changing. But now he's the protagonist in film 2, we've got to have something to latch onto here, a big internal issue he's struggling with that relates to this new theme. But Jurassic Park 2, as best I can tell, is a story that doesn't really have a theme. It has loose ideas about greed and capitalism, but it doesn't conclusively say anything other than echo the conclusions already reached by film 1. It is very much one of those rollercoaster films where you should just turn your brain off and enjoy it, just don't think about it too hard because there's not much going on beneath the surface. People love Jurassic Park for its rich themes, so of course they'd be disappointed with a sequel that dropped the ball here so totally. With Jurassic Park 3, however, things do get a little bit different. The film made an interesting choice where they did give us a new theme, but this time it's around a couple learning to rekindle their old romance as they search for their lost son. It's about family, essentially. And yes, film 1 did have that mini arc where Grant learns to love kids more. This is definitely a better choice than what we got in film 2, because having a theme is better than having none, as it turns out. The issue is that, again, they're totally misunderstanding the greatness of film 1. Grant learning to love kids, while it was enjoyable, was a mere footnote of that movie. The larger question of can science go too far is way more prominent, and I'd argue resonated with audiences far more than Grant's side arc of learning to care more about kids. To back that point up, it is interesting to note that in the original novel, Grant does not have this arc. It is purely an addition for that film. In the book, he likes kids from start to finish there. Yet, Michael Crichton's novel is still a beloved story that sold like hotcakes. Ergo, this theme around Grant is not integral to why that story was such a smash hit. Exactly this idea of rekindling love, like this could have been delivered just as well in an action movie like Die Hard, a rom-com like Love Actually, or even one of those crappy Christmas films. It's hard to get more generic as themes go. They could have at least tried to swing for the fences here. Instead, they gave the baseball a light tap, picking something that was frankly too safe. Like, one thing's for sure, Jurassic Park was handling ideas that challenged the audience and got us to think in new ways about science, which is no easy feat. So in order for any sequel to measure up, they'd need to say something just as profound, if not about science, then at least some other topic using dinosaurs as a vector for this theme's delivery. And while I hesitate to say that's impossible, it sounds like a bloody tall order. If you have an idea for a Jurassic Park sequel you think's great, then do let me know in the comments and prove my cynicism wrong. But if you ask me, the studio should have held off on making any sequels until a concept came along in this vein that had something at least somewhat profound to offer. But they evidently didn't do that when making Jurassic World. Admittedly, this film has an identical plot to that first movie, but let's overlook plot. What about theme? What fresh themes does this film have? Simply, it kind of doesn't. Yes, Jurassic World has given it all a fresh coat of paint, but put both Hammond's and Claire's characters side by side, and you'll notice the similarities are kind of hilarious. What you have is a person so wrapped up in making a profitable business that they're willing to push science to its limits in the name of making dangerous dinosaurs. They never stop to consider the dangers of this. This manifests itself in the form of the dinosaurs escaping and a bunch of people getting eaten. The issue is, This is the same theme. Surely you can aim higher than this. Ultimately, I don't think the Jurassic Park movies ever stood a chance at being great sequels. The concept just isn't right for it. You look at something like Harry Potter or Star Wars, and those are stories where you're set up for success with the next installment because nothing's stopping you from recapturing what audiences loved about that first story, other than your competence at the craft. But with Jurassic Park, while many of the films are technically well edited and scored and acted, every last one of those movies is in a mad scramble to try and justify why it exists, trying to find yet one more contrived excuse to go back to that island or otherwise shove dinosaurs in front of our faces. The creators are stuck between a rock and a hard place with these sequels. They can explore similar themes to film 1, only every time they've done so they've ended up saying just more or less the exact same things, which is hardly thought-provoking. Or they can go the totally different approach of having themes that have little to do with what made film 1 so thought-provoking. And when they do this, while they might compel a few people watching, they're also failing to resonate with why we love Jurassic Park so much in the first place, which is what any good sequel must do. While sequels can be fun sometimes, in the same way new technology can be useful, there are circumstances where, however tempting it might be in the name of profit, some things truly are better off undisturbed. It is deeply ironic that Steven Spielberg never learned from the very moral he told us in that first movie, because if he had, he would have never made film 2. It really is the epitome of irony that all these Jurassic Park sequels are existing in spite of that moral that the first movie was trying to say. It's bloody hard writing a great story, but the truth is, you've got to put the hours in. That's the only way you will improve. Speaking of, I was watching a course lately by Miguel Haugberg where she breaks down writing from an ideas point of view. If you ever struggle with creating characters, coming up with great settings, not the writing itself, but the stuff that comes before the writing, this course was made for you. For those of you who've got Skillshare already, do check this one out. It's one of the best courses they've ever had on their site. And for those of you who haven't, well, you're in luck because Skillshare is sponsoring today's video. And if you're one of the first 500 people to click my link in the description, you'll get a whole month of it free. Then you can watch not just this course, but any of the hundreds of great writing courses they've got on that site. A lot of what I say on this channel I learned from Skillshare, from dialogue to plot structure, I got it there. It's a fantastic resource for learning to be a better writer, and you can use it right now, but be quick about it though, because once those 500 slots are gone, they're gone. Anyway, thanks for watching, keep writing, and I'll see you guys next time on The Closer Look.